Close encounter of the nerd kind. So, today, I was in a well-known entertainment supercenter. I was going in to buy some comics and I kinda got lost due to the recent renovations of the store. They moved essentially everything in the store, so I had to look around to find the comic section. So anyways, I finally found the comic section and rounded a corner to go to the Batman section. Lo and behold, stood the super nerd. I'll call him SN. He was a 40-something-year-old man-child. I'm a nerd, but this dude was like the super version of the nerd stereotype. I just rounded the corner and he said something along the lines of, "Hey," and he just kept talking. Now, I'm not gonna make fun of him or anyone, but something was just not alright up there. I didn't just want to brush him off because I'm a pretty nice guy. He asked me all sorts of questions about Batman and I answered to the best of my knowledge. I wanted to get away from him, but I couldn't because he was right in front of me, and right in front of what I wanted to get as well. Then, he opened his super sweaty button-up shirt to reveal his superhero costume. At this point, my face must have looked like that of an awkward seal. He had made his own superhero, and he wanted to act as him in a movie with Superman. Okay. At this point, I noticed that SN is wearing a cape under his shirt, because I see the string around his neck. We talked some more, then he walked away, only to come back a few seconds later to tell me that he knows how to contact people in Hollywood. Like, what? Anyways, he went on to ask me if I thought that, if he asked nicely, Shannon Doherty would write a screenplay for Superman and whatever his character's name was. I just said that I honestly don't know, man, and know my way right out of there. I guess he wanted me to hold his staff. Over the years, I found most of my best friends in the cosplay and convention community, but also some of the most alarming people I've ever had the misfortune to meet, including this one guy, Carl. Back in college, I went to my friend Shane's dorm room to deliver a power supply I was selling him. He introduced me to his roommate, Carl, and mentioned they were both into cosplay. Okay, that's nice, bye. Carl started messaging me online. He said Shane gave him my contact information. We chatted for a bit. He asked which conventions I was going to, what nerd stuff I was interested in, etc. He wanted to know if I liked the anime Cardcaptor, Sakura, Magic Girl Show, where the main character are little kids. That's okay. We chatted about other things and signed off. A day or two later, he sent me a photo of an intricately carved, unpainted wooden prop of Sakura's magic staff. He said he'd been up for 2 days making it for me so that we could cosplay the two main characters together. I begged off, saying I wasn't really interested in dressing up as a 10-year-old, but that I might make the costume for my little sister. He was very disappointed, because he'd hoped for it to be a couple cosplay. What? We talked like once. Also, dressing up as 10-year-olds is hella romantic. Wow. I told him I wasn't interested, and he went off on a long, nutty rant about how he wasn't someone who wanted friends. He wanted one person who would be his everything, his sole pillar of support. He thought it was his roommate, but now he resented him for replacing him with a girlfriend, and he'd hoped his new person would be me. Then he ripped into me for betraying him after he'd poured his heart and soul into making an unsolicited gift for me. I asked him to leave me alone, blocked him, and told Shane what had happened. He was kind of freaked out too. The next time we talked about Carl, Shane said he'd started bitterly referring to me as her after the incident, and that he'd been increasingly nasty towards him and his girlfriend until they found a different room assignment and stopped talking. I figured the whole thing was water under the bridge. Then, months later, I went to a convention in the area. There was Carl, dressed as the male lead from this fucking cartoon. He didn't say anything to me, just quietly watched me and my friends in panels, contest rehearsals, etc. He started trying to message me online right afterwards, but I blocked him again. This dork followed me around at every convention for a good year, always in the same costume until I graduated and moved away from the area. I'm just glad he was too chicken shit to show up at my dorm. The sadist at nerd camp. Hello Reddit. This will be my third post on the subreddit, so I feel confident in saying that I have some sort of gift I like to call creeper magnetism. Now might be a good time to mention that I am female. Anyways, this summer started off with a trip to a very prestigious university for what is basically nerd camp. For most people there, were actually very lovely, except for a handful of rather strange, sex-starved, or just plain socially awkward individuals who made comments that would send chills down anyone's spine. For example, one boy piped a comment about how we really shouldn't have any qualms about secretly injecting people's water supply with numerous biological chemicals as a means of testing what is suitable for biological warfare. Another brought a roll of what looked like 10,000 condoms and eagerly showed my roommate and I in a coffee shop with the biggest grin on his face. One of my 3 roommates also had a peculiar habit of waking up in the wee hours of the morning, getting dressed, hopping back into bed, and then darting out the door without even a hello as soon as any of us had woken up. The only real physical issue I had were at the final dance, when us biochem kids were introduced to the engineers. I hate to bag on them since most of my brother's friends, including his wife, are engineers, but these kids are ridiculously creepy. I was followed the whole night by one kid who kept trying to teach me how to feel the beat in my veins, and had my wrist grabbed by another kid I met only on the first day. This is not even the worst of it. I have yet to introduce Brett. Brett was what my roommates and I described as the dictionary definition of a tool douchebag upon first impression. He stuck out like a sore thumb among a sea of acne-riddled teens with oversized glasses and pants that were far too big even with a belt. He came from money, unlike most of us, and liked to let everyone know how superior he was to everyone else. He sat alone on all the bus rides, and until my roommates and I finally approached him, only mingled with it with his fellow acquaintance Drew, since they went to the same high school. He liked to brag about how long it would take him to get ready and how he probably spent more time on his hair than any girls that he knew. He was ridiculously good looking, and he knew it. On one particular bus ride, the two of us managed to be stuck together when we got on late. His response was a rude, "Man, I don't know if I can do this." I read silently next to him as he scrolled through his Instagram pics. Glancing over, I saw one of him and another girl in formal attire, most likely for a dance. I saw this as an opportunity to initiate small talk, so I asked if that was his girlfriend. Nah, these are really my dates." He showed me his Facebook pictures of him with other girls in other fancy outfits. There were close to a dozen. "To be honest, I hate all these girls." He then showed me some pictures of him at concerts, parties, other random places, always with a girl at his side. "They're so dumb," he continued. "I know they like me, but I just hate all of them. I usually take them out when I'm bored and we'll all get hammered and then hook up, but that's it. I could never really date any of them. Hell, I can't even hook up when I'm sober." I was past the point of being slightly uncomfortable. The way he was speaking about these girls was beyond fucked up. He described several hookups in very intricate detail and referred to the girls as though they were pieces of meat. Then, the real crazy talk began. "I like to take these girls out to parties and get them super drunk. I'll take care of them at first, help them to the bathroom, hold their hair back when they throw up. Then I like to pull them back and shove them in their vomit, kick their face in, spit on them, and then say, 'Fuck you.' These girls, they're so fucking dumb." If I had not been so shocked by the words he just spoke, I probably would have said something like, "What the fuck, Brett? You're a disgusting piece of shit." But all I could respond was a stare equally as emotionless as his. I think he found that intriguing, maybe a little comforting, maybe a little attractive, because the rest of his trip was spent in my presence. He would often talk to me about how different I was, how I didn't give a shit just like him. He would tell me his stories about belittling and dehumanizing women as though I admired them. To be honest, I didn't say much because I didn't even know how to respond. He was a maniac, and he really got off on treating girls like garbage. he got off on reliving those memories as well. We had the strangest level of friendship because I was so disgusted with him, and at the same time, he was such an attractive person. He was extremely charismatic, had a great sense of humor, and was an extremely intelligent individual. There was something off about him though, and it was only because of what he had disclosed with me that I feel like I was able to pick up on it. His eyes, piercing blue, were so empty and cold. When talking about personal topics or tragic events, he never missed a beat with a sympathetic reply, but it was so disingenuous. I discussed the topic with my roommates, and we came to the conclusion that Brett was a sociopath, a narcissistic sadist, or some other type of psychopath that, no matter how attractive, we should all stay away from. After the camp ended, I never thought I would see him again, and he would simply be a creepy story to tell friends, but that was not the case. My final trip of the summer, you better believe it, was to accompany my best friend Pamela on her annual trip to visit her dad in Pennsylvania. Somewhere in these wooded forests lurked a monster by the name of Brett. I had no intention of meeting up with him, but I did plan on meeting up with his friend Drew. We had hit it off during camp, sharing many of the same interests and hobbies. He told me before we left that if I was ever in PA or DC, I should let him know, and he would be more than happy to meet up. Although he and Brett hung out at camp, I knew they weren't friends back at home. They were far too different. Drew was a freckly paper-white ginger who was 5'10" and maybe 135 pounds at the most. He played video games and hiked for fun. Not to mention, Brett specifically told me that he hated Drew. Apparently, Brett believed Drew was trying way too hard to be like him. That was most definitely not true. So Drew, Pamela, and I go hiking around his town. I don't ask about Brett when Drew mentions him, but my best friend is dying to meet him after everything I told her. Drew says he can invite us to a party, and then we can all catch up. We ended up going, since apparently Pamela thought spending the night making venison jerky wasn't a preferable alternative to meeting with a crazy man. The party ends up being something out of my nightmares. Raging college kids, alcohol, weed, sex, everything that makes me want to hide in a corner. Pamela was having a blast, and so far, I managed to avoid consuming any of the drinks Brett was shoving into my hands. He was staying way too close to me the whole night, trying to pull me onto him when I sat on couches, grazing my ass when I stood next to him. At one point, he pressed me against the wall and forcibly kissed my neck before his not date came around and got very pissy with the both of us. I hid from him for the rest of the night. Eventually, the party began breaking up because someone got wind that the cops were coming. Drew was rushing me to the car, but I couldn't find Pamela anywhere. I looked in the bathroom and found Pamela flipping her shit and dragging me to the tub. There in the tub was Brett's date. She was surrounded by vomit, and her face and lips were palish blue. The both of us began freaking out because she wasn't breathing. I called Drew, and he raced into the house, and the three of us dragged her out to the front and called for an ambulance. Drew was pretty stoned, but told us to wait in the car and that he would explain everything to the cops since he didn't want us to get into trouble. The cops came and questioned everyone still at the scene. The girl was taken away, and Pamela ended up having to call her dad to pick us up. The next day, I called Drew, and he told me that the girl was alright. He had also talked to Brett, who seemed completely unfazed by everything. Apparently, she passed out while they were fooling around in the basement, so he took the liberty of dumping her in the bathtub, where he knew someone would find her since she was his friend. Then he split, because he didn't want to get in trouble for underage drinking. I know that the world is a fucked up place and people can be downright evil, but to witness this firsthand is rather nauseating. Brett is only 18 years old. It terrifies me about what he will be capable of in a few years. So, let's all hope that we never have to meet the soulless eyes of Brett. Ever. Tom. I can't be alone. I'm too afraid of being alone. I also have problems texting, but that's not as bad as being alone. I just can't get over what happened. It started out on my freshman year in high school. It was after winter vacation, and I had just found my cell phone after having been lost for a year. I was so anxious to get people's numbers into it that I mindlessly added my number onto Facebook, telling anyone to text me if they wanted to. The first one who texted me were my close friends, and then there was Tom. Tom was just some random guy on my Facebook who had added all the freshman girls, or at least that's what I heard. "Hey sexy," was the first thing he texted me, and I had to ask him who he was. He told me that he was Tom, and that he wanted to get to know me better. That automatically creeped me out, considering I knew nothing of him, and he apparently knew some stuff of me. I didn't think much of it, considering I give everyone a chance. He ruined that chance though. He immediately got pervy with me, saying that I was a hot redhead, and that he liked how I wasn't a ginger and that I had auburn hair. The fact that he noticed my hair so closely gave me warning signs, but the next thing he told me was that I had wonderful boobs and that he loved to tie me up. Then proceeded to go on about how hot bondage was, how I'd be perfect for it. Ew, no thanks, and goodbye. I ignored him pretty much, but he kept texting me. Unfortunately, I couldn't block him, so I dealt with his messages as best as I could and ignored him. He kept texting me for most of the freshman year, and I just kept ignoring him. I couldn't see why he was so interested. He was one of those douchebag hotshot sophomores that felt so awesome because he wore his pants to the ground, but I was a curvy, as he called me. I thought myself as chubby, anime-obsessed nerd. I really couldn't see it, but I forgot about it over the summer. He didn't bother me at all. Though, my first day of sophomore year, I got a text from him saying how I looked so fine that day and that he'd do stuff to me. I finally told him to fuck off. I wasn't about to spend my sophomore year going through him again. He left me alone for a week, but then I received an insanely violent message from him. "I'm gonna kill you, you no good skank. You're a no good whore. Any girl would kill to be with me. Why not you? You fat bitch. I'm gonna slit your throat and make you hurt. I'll cut up your legs and it went on and on to him talking about raping me. I was horribly scared by this, but I wasn't going to let him get to me. That's what he wanted, I was guessing. I kept getting messages about how I was a whore and how he'd kill me, and how he knew people. Really, he was a wannabe gangster and whiter than I was, and I'm pretty pale. So, the death threats continued on for my sophomore year, nothing over the summer, and then junior year came. I didn't really make a big deal about it. I thought him as an annoying douche that was just going to try to bully me into whatever he wanted. He never even came close to me, so why should I fear? Besides, it was his senior year, and he wouldn't be able to bother me much after that. I got my number changed, so I was good. Junior year was when it escalated though. Since he couldn't text me any longer, he stalked me. I would spot him in the hallways, following me to my classes, when obviously he shouldn't have been there. I was retaking biology, since I failed, and I was in a hallway juniors and seniors never descended down, but I still saw him. I ended up complaining to John, to which everything got out of hand. Let me explain John for a moment. John was a student teacher that was my best friend. I kid you not, he was and is my best friend. He was my next door neighbor, and we had gotten to know each other through the years of him being next door, from me being locked out and him inviting me inside. I remember the first time I was actually super nervous and crept out because I didn't know him, and when we started talking, he was the most perfect man on this planet. Plus, he didn't want to see me freeze, which isn't creepy at all. So anyways, we actually have a ton in common. So finding out that he was going to be my teacher for a decent amount of the year, I nearly flipped. Besides, I had a small crush on him, so seeing him in my school made me more than happy, though it would never have happened. He was 27 and I was 16 at the time. Never gonna happen, but we were still best friends. The reason why that is so important is because Tom used John as leverage. He had gotten a hold of my number again, and threatened to tell John I liked him if I didn't do things with him. Not only that, but get John in trouble for having me at his house and claim that he was a pedophile, and never let him get a job as a teacher again. Creepy part about that was no one except John, my mom, and I knew that I hung out at John's house 24/7. With that at hand, I finally talked to him. I straight out texted him, "Are you stalking me, you creepy fuck?" I couldn't help but wonder. Instead of telling me, he started telling me a bunch of stuff about me. I usually spent my free time with John. I eat cream cheese out of the jar. I can't sleep unless there's music in the background. He even said he saw me masturbating once and wondered who I was thinking about. It was John, wasn't it? He asked me. I turned off my phone, went over to John's and told him I was spending the night with him because I felt safest with him. Fuck, if he would get in trouble. I was not about to be attacked by this crazy fucker. He wanted me to go to the police, but being a small town, I started spending the night on the safety of John's couch and spent my days in school being extra paranoid. I used to drag my friends to classrooms far from theirs so I wouldn't be alone. I was so afraid that if I were ever truly alone, he'd try something. He had to be stalking me on a personal level if he knew all that stuff about me. Keeping my phone off had to be one of the best things I did, considering it made it so that he didn't have contact with me. If he ever tried talking to me, I would slam him against the wall, or so I thought. This all escalated to the main event. So I was walking in the hallway, walking back from the bathroom. I was so scared that I was alone, that I did not even notice that someone was standing in the boys' bathroom doorway. Whoever it was grabbed me tightly by the arm and threw me onto the bathroom floor. I looked up. It was Tom. Now, let me also explain this. I hate pants. I always wear skirts. I was wearing a skirt that day. But that said, one of my first motions was slipping my hands over my skirt so my panties weren't exposed. "What are you doing?" I yelled at him, scooting myself against the wall. Tom didn't say anything. He brought out a knife, and my eyes widened. He kneeled down in front of me and put the knife up my leg. It dug into my skin, and I let out a scream of pain, to which he covered my mouth. He dropped the knife and moved his hand onto and into my underwear and proceeded to do things. I struggled around, but his hands was against my mouth so roughly. It actually kept my head and body back. After a bit, he pulled down his pants and brought down his boxers. I struggled even more at the sight of him exposed and was able to kick him when someone walked in. I didn't know this person, but I couldn't help but thank him so much after the incident. Tom was distracted. I got up, pushed him over, and sprinted down the hallway. I could have gone into the closest room, but I was heading for John. I knew he had a class because he kept complaining about how loud they were. I looked behind me and saw Tom racing after me. I continued running and finally made it to John's room, where I busted through the door, screamed, closed the door, and proceeded to explain what was going on through my tears. I was leaning on the door and I felt Tom pressing up against it. "Why is there blood going down your leg?" John shouted, and I could actually tell he is sincerely concerned, and I was really scared as well. Though, at the moment, I was trying not to die, and didn't give that much attention. "Call a code, he's trying to kill me," I screamed, pushing against the door. John rushed to the phone and called the office, where he told them to lock up the school. We were under lockdown for what seemed days to me, but it was only about 2 hours. I spent that time clinging on to John, crying. Eventually, Tom was arrested, and I was treated for my wound. This was extremely traumatizing for me. I can't be alone now. I really can't. I'll cry if I am alone. I'm just so afraid that I'll be dragged into a corner. The school was helpful, though, allowing me to bring a friend wherever I went. I am better now, but I still can't be alone for long. The most helpful person through all of this was John, and he still helps me. In fact, now that I'm older, I live with him, and we live a semi-normal life as roommates. I have a scar on my leg, and it's still very noticeable. I know it's not my fault, but I really wish I tried to do something before all of this happened. The only good thing that came out of this is that John is super protective over me, and it's good, considering he acts like my boyfriend. Oh, another good thing is that his immediate action at the school landed him a job there, so I guess you can say that You should always take immediate action. If anyone ever bothers you, don't be afraid to tell the police. As much as John tried to help, the only thing that would have really worked was to get the police involved ahead of time. And there is my story.